here we are. I'm Tom Osman, and this is Whatever Comes Next, the podcast where I explore the world of underground and independent music making. And on today's episode, I'm talking with Bill Dickson, guitarist and songwriter for a band that most people probably won't have heard of called Rousers, who back in 1979 recorded a demo for Sire Records. And in basically from 1979 until this year, or just before, the recording basically disappeared into the Sire vaults and didn't see the light of day. But now it's been unearthed and finally released all these years later. And sometimes, I think that the stories of the musicians and the bands and the artists that for whatever reason just didn't get the breaks and didn't make it into the kind of public eye can be just as interesting, if not more so, than the stories of the people who you actually know, and they have all of the famous reference points. I mean, for example, last episodes I talked with Martin Atkins, which was just a total thrill for me, and he's been involved in so many bands that within the sort of underground realm that I'm exploring from my point of view are high profile, Public Image Limited and Killing Joke and Nine Inch Nails and Swans. But this is a contrast. This is about a group of musicians going way back to the 70s who were very much in the New York scene of New York Dolls and influenced by bands like Ramones, as well as 50s rock and roll. They made some great music of the time, and just for whatever reason, they didn't get the breaks. So it's cool that this record now sees the light of day, and I think it's a great rock and roll record and definitely deserves to be heard, and it's a story that deserves to be told. So I'm going to play a track from the album. You can actually buy it now on vinyl and CD. You can listen to the album on Bandcamp. It's going to be available to stream next year, but for the time being, these are the ways to get hold of it. I'm going to play a track from the album at the end of this interview with a little clip coming up just now. But I strongly suggest that you check out the record. We have a great in-depth conversation about the time of making the record, the process of the record, and conversations about basically what happened next. So I thank Howard at Howlin' Wolf Media for presenting this opportunity to me. And thanks a lot to Bill for giving me his time and his insights. You can follow me on all social media at Tom Osman Sounds. You can go to my website, tomosmansounds.com, if you'd like to check out the music that I'm making. You might also like to go to Patreon /whatever comes next if you'd like to check out some extended interviews, some of them for free, some of them to be paid for with a small contribution. And other than that, I will put links in the description for Rousers, for following them, for getting hold of the record, for listening to it on Bandcamp. And I think that is all that needs to be said for now. So, without further ado, Bill Dickson of the Rousers. Take it away. Connecting from?
Medford, New York. That's Long Island.
Ah, well, that's interesting. I've interviewed a couple of people from Long Island in recent times. So how long have you been there for?
Oh, I'm going to say about maybe 15 years or so.
Okay. And before that, were you in other parts of New York, or
I
you moved around?
was before that I was in Brooklyn. Before that I was in different place in New York, and I first moved to New York in 1974.
Okay.
Something like that, and stayed there until I was briefly in Brooklyn, and then ended up in New Hampshire. But I spent a lot of time in New York, in Manhattan and Brooklyn.
Yeah.
But I like Long Island. It's nice.
So we're obviously here because Left for Dead Records is releasing your 1979 Sire Session, the Rousers. Well, I guess it's the only album of Rousers, and it's been 46 years until it
Well,
finally got released. Or
I will say it's the only album of the original Rousers.
Mhm.
Uh, the band over its time eventually released. We became a trio, but by the time it was the 20s, the 2000s. So, but this is the only album release of the original Rousers, and some say the best Rousers.
it's great. I
It's a
mean,
good sounding record.
it's a
It's a good
really great sounding
sounding
record. It's
record.
it's
You
funny
know,
because like when people talk about a demo, I usually think of something quite rough, but to me, this is like just a great sounding record. It doesn't sound like what I think of as a demo, as being something kind of like somehow incomplete.
it has it's not really a polished turd. I'm sure you've heard the expression "you can't polish a turd."
Yeah.
Uh, and this, it's not like this needed all sorts of 21st century magic to uh, turn it into something that wasn't there in the first place. Has great dynamics on it, has good performances. The tempo on some of these things is insane. You can tell that which I guess was similar to the tempo that a song like Man Oh Man, for instance,
Hmm.
it's like Oh to Be Young. It's just it
Yeah.
sounds like a diesel starting up or something. It's crazy. But
Yeah,
yeah,
for sure.
it has a great sound to it, and it's it's really a delight to hear it to me. It's something I haven't really given much thought for for a long time.
So at that time, when you recorded it, did you get the opportunity to actually hear the songs like before this point now? Like what was kind of the situation there after you'd had the
The
session?
My recollection of what happened, and others may have a different take, but I believe what happened is we had recorded I believe about 14 songs, and out of, let's say, then Ed did a mix of, let's say, five of them. I guess the ones that we thought made, sort of pared down for presentation, as it were. And our guitar player, Tom, was an assistant engineer or something over at Media Sound, which I think is where he had bumped into Ed Stasium in the first place. But at any rate, he ended up doing uh, a rough mix of some of the remaining songs, which he, being a young man in love with his guitar playing, they're very guitar heavy mixes. But again, they were rough. It's like, here it is, and everyone got cassettes of them, and uh, nothing really came of it. It was largely forgotten. I mean, you might play it for friends. I think somebody ran acetates of it that were put on some jukeboxes or something of some things, but it didn't really, just became some cassette that you forgot about and never played. And, in my case, I went on to make other music following it, so I didn't really miss it. Uh, but to I was shocked to hear how good it was. It was a lot better than it sounds a lot like what you end up with if you decided to make a real record,
Yeah.
which is sort of, I like that aspect of it because it's the immediacy of it is really its charm in a lot of ways. It hasn't been over thought out. You know what I mean? It's not like, let's make rumors for 3 years, and
Yeah.
make sure that every little thing is just in place. And as time went on, we would do other demos for other record companies. but some of those things were much more. Sire was at the time a sort of tiny little label, and this was a tiny little studio. And you compare the experience of that to we did a demo at RCA studio, and I forget what is Studio A or B, whatever. You're in this huge room where all sorts of history's been made. It's not like you have your own sympathetic engineer or producer. You have whoever they give. Here, you do it. So it's not the same experience and not the same result. Although we did some of those were, you start to learn how to record a little bit,
Yeah.
but the sound of this thing it's just right there. It sounds like guys playing. It almost sounds like we play better than we do. You know what I mean? It just the and a lot of that I attribute to the mix that Bob Stander did. He basically mixed and mastered we got these 8-track things that were all digitized, transferred to digital, and he did a wonderful job of I think getting a good placement on the vocals and good placements on the guitars in relation, just a nice space to listen in. It sounds
Mm.
like you're right there uh, listening to a band play.
Yeah.
It's it'd be like a really good live show almost.
Yeah, it's I was having this conversation with someone recently, both a musician and a mastering engineer, and we were talking about how I remember a while ago I read this quite extensive biography of Elvis. And as I tend to do when I read music biographies, I tend to sort of get absorbed listening to the music of the people I'm reading about. And I remember like listening to those early Sun records and just being so impressed by like, how tight those performances are. Because back in those days, it wasn't like you're going to go into the studio, you're going to do tons of overdubs, you're going to like re-record parts. It's like
No, you
the
had to in
performance has
those
to be
days.
there.
You had to be ready to record. You were recording a performance, not, well, we'll fix it in the mix. It's almost being mixed as it's being recorded. And that's something that Ed Stasium did a good job on getting those initial sounds there. And, I believe the drums is one track. It might be. I believe it's like one overhead. If you ever talked to Ed Stasium, he could tell you how he mic'd it. I don't remember any of that stuff, but
So from that point of view of like, needing to have these really tight performances, what was the sort of story leading up to that recording in terms of how the band got together and how long you'd been playing these songs before you were ready to record them?
uh, well, we started out in about 1977, I believe. Some of them were relatively new. Some of them were because we're always doing our we had always tried to have a new song for every show, be it a cover or an original, something that was going to be different from this show that you didn't see at the last one, kind of thing. So we practiced a lot, so we were able to come up with uh, material at a decent rate. Some of those songs we'd probably been playing for at least a year, if not a year and a half. Twanged was a very early song for us. But yeah, we knew how to play those songs by then.
And one thing I'm curious about sort of between, what it's like looking back on times years later versus the experience of actually being there. It's like looking back from now, we can go like, okay, so like in 1977, 78, 79, the Ramones were around, New York Dolls were around, various other bands that we now refer to as punk bands were around. But at that time, did you feel like, oh, there's this movement that's totally different going on? Or was it not that kind of thing that you sort of see in that way until years later and you look back on it?
Well, I don't. I guess I don't. however, we became besotted with the New York Dolls, and that was sort of our entree into the New York music scene, which was mostly a rock and roll scene. The fact that it later was called anything that was happened in that era was called punk. I always thought was idiotic, but the it was an exciting time. But there were all these, American Graffiti in those movies that had come out in the early '70s and stuff. There was a rock and roll revival. So even though that music wasn't currently being played on the radio, you had WCBS FM, the oldies station. So a lot of that old music was in the Dolls were very much you judge a band in some ways by the covers they choose. It tells you something about them and about you. And, going back to the Stones, the Beatles, and everybody else. And they Dolls had great covers. We look for songs that might not be necessarily the most obvious one to do, but you did some of those too. You're playing two sets a night, just about it. Back in those days, there were two sets at CBGB's, two sets at Max's, and most other places, and you'd have one or two bands, and they were all going to do that. So you needed some material. You had
Yeah.
to. I was surprised that Party Boy was on that. I didn't realize that we had been doing that early. That became our sort of signature song, the only single we made with that crew had
Okay.
Party Boy and back with Don't Let the Band Playing, or reverse, depending. But I was surprised that we were doing that early. I thought that had maybe been a year or so later.
And when that you had that single of Party Boy, so that was a separate recording session because you did that with Wayne Kramer, right?
Oh yeah, we had managers at that time that dance music was sort of coming up, and they decided to put all sorts of who do we if you ever listen to that single, it has some questionable like there's some spoken intro with some girl going, "Hey boy, come here, boy." So it's almost like it's enough of a novelty record already in a way. The song is just kind of but we certainly didn't think of, oh, thank God the punk rock era is here. Let us join the punk army. It was just the feeling that we kind of got from the Dolls, not because they were so sort of slipshod in a way, like
Mm.
brilliant, but almost semi-pro, rather than most bands that were doing that time really kicked ass. Didn't there was always an element of like this thing might go completely haywire here. You know,
Yeah.
it always felt like, and David Johansen, you never saw something like that in your life.
Were
He,
you
he was
influenced by
amazing.
like the visual sides of the New York Dolls because they're pretty
Oh
striking visually?
hell yeah! You couldn't, if you take away their sort of absurd presentation, uh, it wouldn't feel the same. Part of what made them remarkable was that they had a sort of transgressive appearance. It's like they had no. It's like as they tried to capture in their original album advertising. I think it went something along the lines of "You're gonna love them whether you like it or not." Uh, they're they really had a "we don't give a fuck" attitude that was, but at the same time, very entertaining. They wanted to entertain you. They just did. The song after song that was, you know, one is as good as the next, and they're on stage very uh, energizing, just to be in the same room with them was exciting, so they had whatever, uh, but at the same time, you felt like, oh, they're just a little bit better than us, than our high school bands. Like, it seemed like, oh, this shit is achievable.
Yeah.
Uh, and, you'd go and there was always once you saw that there was always somebody playing somewhere, uh, it was so exciting, the idea that you could be part of that, and to be accepted in that, thing. I mean, the Dolls broke up, this and that, and very few bands got signed, but some did. So there was that idea that, oh, you could have a career in show business.
Yeah. And so you've mentioned about how by the time you had the single come out, you had managers. So was there a time where you felt like, this is going to be a career? This is going to be what I do. It's going to, we're going to carry on doing this like for our whole working lives?
Uh, well, so it turned out the we believed we were going to make it. This was like, I believe, the first demo we'd done for a record company. And we were to go on and do, let's call it, at least two or three more for various, I guess they would be considered major labels at the time, versus Sire was almost like an independent label, even though they were distributed by, I guess, Warner's or whatever. If that answered your question, I think I got distracted.
Well, once you were at that point, in terms of Sire and Seymour Stein, like, how sort of aware were you of label interest, and like, when did sort of you realize that you maybe weren't gonna get to where you thought you should, like that this wasn't going to get released? What sort of happened there in terms of the aftermath of the recording?
Oh, that's an excellent question that I'm poorly equipped to answer. you know, my recollection was that had been some uh, notion of, oh, well, we could do possibly something minor with it. There was also a question of who was going, if it were to go, who would produce it and that sort of thing. And for whatever reason, it floundered. Uh, I don't, it never occurred to us that we should release it ourselves, uh, aside from, you didn't have the money or the thought. Our feeling was they're going to do that. If we release something, that'll queer the whole deal. You know what I mean? Which was sort of a stupid attitude, because you could have really expanded your interest by having something out there. As it was, the only people who ever were aware of the Rousers were people in the same room with us.
Yeah.
So that was probably an error, but I do believe that our thinking was that we're going to get signed.
Yeah.
We're doing demo. Why put it out? The idea of why we never put it out, as the years rolled on and it became clear that there was to be no brass ring there. It's part of that is that, fundamental to the release of this particular record is Jerid O'Connell, the original drummer, who I don't know if he somehow was in contact with the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. I think about there's a tape of us that they have in their collection, some cassette that some dude made. And I think in getting a copy of that, he had gotten in touch with the archivist there, and somebody mentioned, oh, there's a bunch of Rouser stuff here. And so it was tracked down and found. in other words, by the time the original uh, rhythm section was replaced with other people who we recorded with and did our stuff with, and never did anything besides self releases. There was no uh, thought about looking back or putting it out, I think, until Jerid stumbled on this. Oh, look, they had the original 8 tracks, and he was instrumental in getting those transferred and seeing what interest Ed Stasium had in them. Who, uh, God bless Ed Stasium, that he had that sense of like, oh, I still have my Rousers cassette here, and it's I mean he remembered uh, us and that experience fondly. Of course, he's now Ed Stasium, so it's he didn't really have time to get involved with working on this beyond he was able to do the mix on uh, Bumblebee Rock, which
Hmm.
is great to have a Ed Stasium mix on the record.
Yeah.
Again,
So
I'm not sure if I answered your question or if I just went out on a dither.
no, it's all good. So I'm curious to know then, sort of in this time between the original band recording the session and then now that it's been unearthed and you've put it out, what was the sort of existence of the band in the time between?
uh, well, of this original band, uh, I should just lay out the quick rundown on what happened with the Rousers. Is the same management uh, team that was around when we put out that single came to the conclusion that what this band needs is a new rhythm section. So we our our pals that we had known forever, we took we being the careerist fellows we were at the time, went, but good idea, by all means. So we got a new bass player and drummer. This is still with the singer Jeff Buckland. Went on with that for a couple of years. We went into various other bands, uh, sometimes with the same people but different names. And people would always come up to Tom Milmore and go, "Oh, Tommy Rouser." So at some point, we just decided to be the Rousers, revert to being called the Rousers. By this time, it was with Sal, Tom, that's drummer, Tommy, the guitar player, Brett Wilder on bass, and myself on guitar. And we played in various. We had a band called the Praise Jockeys with that lineup. That was a good band. That was entertaining. Uh, but they would have, I mean, there's nothing in it for those later people to release something that they're not even on.
Yeah.
And as we kept, piling up newer recordings with things, you increasingly don't really look back. But I think for Jerid, it was a much shorter time to look back on. And when he discovered that, and my God, when you hear it, it's like, there's nothing wrong with this rhythm section. The fuck are you talking about? The rhythm section
Yeah.
shines on that record. The rhythm section is aces.
Absolutely.
So sorry, Jerid, we made a mistake. I don't. It's
Yeah, I mean, like just on the topic of the rhythm section, like and on the drumming particularly, like I think one of my favorite tracks in terms of the drums is probably Product of the USA. Like the hi-hat playing and the drum rolls on that are particularly great.
I'm going
So
to tell Jerid you said so.
please, yeah, no, and and as well, like for your performance as well, and like and the guitars in general, like I think maybe Angel Town, I think is a great example of the interplay between the guitars and like everyone with the bass and the vocals, like there are just great performances all the way through the album. Like Lonely Summer as well, like I love the kind of it's kind of like glistening guitar that I feel like you hear in the 80s, like in bands like the Smiths, they got into that whole kind of like jangly style of guitar playing. Like there's just all these beautiful little sonic elements throughout the record that really stand the test of time.
Yeah, the guitar sound is darn good. You know, I mean it's very much, whatever Ed and Bob put on that stuff to make it sound super good. Uh Kind of the basics of where it is already is just in those Fender amps with the reverb. It's I'm delighted to say I still have that guitar and amplifier. So, but you're right. The part of the joy of playing with Tom Milmore is that aside from that he plays good leads and makes up good parts, is if you come up with some little thing, he'll find his way in it, and it sounds good when you play with Tom.
Yeah, you get like you're playing complements. You complements one another in the parts that you put in there.
I think we already knew how to play together, and it's funny sometimes Jerid was essential to the sound of the band in some ways. Not that he'd say like, "Oh, that's too trebly or too bass or that's stupid," but he'd have a sense of rouserness, I guess. It's almost like he was the conscience of what it meant to be a rouser. Like a rouser does not sound like that, or doesn't do this. And I may just be making this up.
I mean, mythology always has a certain element of like
Well,
embellishment, so that's all fine.
and for so this experience has made me focus quite a bit on the earliest part of my career,
Yeah.
and that part of the when you're young and the world is ahead of you, and you listen to that, you can see why this band felt they had every very bright future ahead of them. Like that this was a good band that surely people were, once they could just get their hands on this, gosh, were they going to be happy?
Yeah, I think it's understandable that you had that attitude.
Which, I mean, every band I think thinks they're probably better than they are. But uh, we were right to be confident, I think. We weren't very good businessmen in terms of like, should we take this deal? Should we do this? Should we do that? You know, but we were good at that other part of it was pretty good.
Yeah. And in terms of your following career in the music world, so like I'm aware that you had at least one solo record quite a long time later. Did you actively stay involved making music all through the years?
Oh yeah, unless there was, you might go 6 months or whatever, or a year or so in between. Uh, Soon after the second Rousers, that is minus with Sal and Brett. Brett and I joined Philippe Marcade and some other fellows in a band called the Backbones. Philippe is from the Senders. If you're familiar with the Senders, they were New York bandmates, R&B band, like just great front man, very entertaining fellow. But so we played with him for a while. Then people did various things. We had a band called the Praise Jockeys. I think I mentioned was a quartet. Once Jeff was out of the band, I became the singer in whatever uh, outfits we had, and typically it would be Brett and Sal as the rhythm section, and me and Tom playing guitar, and me singing. Brett would periodically go off, quit, come back, whatever. When he did that, I would become the bass player. We also had a band where I was the bass player, and we had a keyboard player named Chris Pondish in a band called the Mockingbirds. Um, We had another one that we had a different bass player called and we were called the Shambles. Uh, we had another one that was, oh my Lord. And soon after that, we went back to being the Rousers, and played as a four-piece. And then Brett left, and we ended up playing as a trio. And we remained doing that until 2020 when Sal King died of COVID.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So that was basically the end of my live performance career. And, we were recording and playing out until the Rousers released, as a trio, released something in, I think, 2012 and 2018. Uh, and that's just where we were. Occasionally, we re-recorded some of the songs that are, in fact, on this record. Is how long, I've been playing Party Boy for a long time.
Yeah. And so like through all of that time, were you able to make a living from music?
Fuck no. No, sir. That in my experience, that's not how this works.
Okay.
I'm not a good enough player to make money like as a session person or something like that. It wouldn't occur to me to give somebody a lesson on anything. Uh, in terms of, that didn't strike me as something to do. I ended up writing instruction books.
For instructions for what?
For a while, I wrote instruction books for Acclaim Entertainment. They made video games, which was a super fun job. And it's a shame that they ruined that company and ran it out of business. But while it was in business, it was, it's hilarious. You're writing, you can make up all sorts of silliness to keep the booklet entertained. And when they folded, I ended up writing instructions for the iHome company for a while. But no, you always had to, even back in the band days, a lot of people did market research coding. In those days, it attracted a lot of artists, musicians, and fuck ups of all sort, who just wanted to, you had to do something to make a living. I worked at a bagel store, did all sorts of stuff. Everybody had a day job. Nobody was making it. I think even the sign bands, I don't know if they necessarily had jobs, but you weren't living high off the hog because you put out Ramones. That didn't sell a lot of records. New
Yeah.
York Dolls didn't sell a lot of records. The working musicians were like the studio guys or the guys on Broadway.
Yeah.
Everybody else, it's whatever you were making. It's sort of, it's cycled back where now you make your money playing live because there isn't, unless you're Taylor Swift, I don't know what the sales there. Uh, I don't know how people make money doing this. I know that streaming is, I've made at least a quarter off that.
I mean, streaming makes money for someone, but I guess not generally the
Well,
artists.
I think it's great that you can get it's sort of like radio in that way that tons of people can get interested in your music and
True.
enjoy it. They don't necessarily have to plunk down their money for the album, but all your listeners know that having heard me and having heard you, they understand that there's a purchase in their future.
Indeed.
I mean, is there a question? I'm not saying it's the must-have record of the year, but I bet all your listeners would enjoy it.
I agree.
And I can't send you a copy. It's not in my power. So
I never ask people to send me free copies. That's not my style.
No, but I'm saying your listeners as well. I is just not able to. So you must purchase your own, my brother.
And on that topic of purchasing the album, tell me a bit about the releases. So it's out on vinyl and it's out on CD and it's going to be streaming in like a couple of months or the start of next
I
year, something
believe
like
the
that.
idea is to not dilute the physical sale with the make believe sale. So
Indeed.
so basically, we want to make bank on your inconvenience. That's our business model, and I think it's a wise one.
I don't think it's unreasonable. So tell me about the physical release of the album then. So it's limited edition vinyl, limited edition CD, is that right?
I think the CD is only limited to if we make X number and they sell out, we'll make some more.
Okay.
Uh, and as far as the vinyl, my guess would be, although they are limited, the white vinyl is a limited edition. Uh, the other one is limited in that it's numbered, I think,
Ah,
whatever.
that's right, because I saw there were two different versions. Yeah, so okay, you've got like a
Zero,
numbered set of 100, I think, and then you've got
right.
the
And
other
then
vinyl.
there's a set of 200 of the original black vinyl pressing, I think. And after that, we'll make as many as, if more pressings are warranted, thanks to your enthusiastic audience's response, we'll make as many as you freaking want.
Well, I hope there will be, because it is genuinely a really, really cool record that
It's and it's
deserves a big audience.
The presentation itself is kind of nice. The cover's nice. The insert is cool. It's a good record. It's a good product.
And so, in terms of Rousers now that the album's come out, what's next?
Well, Cadillac cars for everyone. I
Nice.
believe that's why we got into this, right? Cadillacs, swimming pools. Most of us either have the beautiful girl by now or we don't.
Yeah.
So that one's checked off. And they didn't care that we didn't have Cadillac cars.
That's good. So now it's just a
Isn't
bonus.
that something? Isn't that something? So I don't. Hopefully, this will bring about a appreciation that the various band members will enjoy some recognition for their efforts of long ago. I don't. If somebody got so excited they wanted to give us a bunch of money, we get together. I hope. I don't know. I mean, I haven't. We've remained friends among the original Connecticut-based part of the Rousers. Our singer Jeff Buckland was a fellow from Yonkers, I believe, who we met at art school. And once the Rousers broke up, there was extremely limited contact over the years. Not no animosity as far as I know, but I think for Jeff, it was sort of like, I think he mentioned on his website, oh, when I was young, I was in a rockabilly band.
Yeah.
It's kind of dismissive of it. And he went on to a nice career as a animator and illustrator. So, I think to him it was sort of like, oh, I was young and foolish. But I hope that he takes some pride in how good if he wants to call it a rockabilly band, on how good he was in it.
Yeah.
And he was a good songwriter too. That song "Be My Girl" is his song.
Yeah, that's a really cool song. I do like that one a lot.
And he wrote a bunch of songs that the Rousers did. So I hope he gets a kick out of it. I know John Henn is very excited to see it and hear it, and he should, because he's the rhythm section is very good on the record. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
If the rhythm section sucked, you wouldn't want to hear it. You know what I mean?
Totally. Yeah.
It just ruins the sound. Like if there's something that irritates you about the playing on the record, it makes it hard to enjoy. I mean,
For
to me,
sure.
that's like sort of the vocalist and Steely Dan and the vocalist and Rush. Like I can't stand the sound of their voices, so they can play as good as they like, but that's I think it's the same thing. If there was just glaring thing, it's just I can't stand that guitar sound.
Yeah.
If you hate the guitar sound on this, I feel bad for you because I think it's darn good.
I think it's darn good too.
And it's it's to me it's just fun to listen to. It's kind of a party record in that way that it just sort of like it bops along. And
I completely agree.
There's a few nice quieter moments that, although I have to say, as time has gone on, Smother, it's like, okay, it has a nice little bit in it, but it seems a little syrupy to me today. And it's funny you mentioned Angel Town. That was a time where the writing, like the intent of the writing, was to kind of see what you could do. Like make a song that sounds like this, and it's exciting to realize that and get what you want. As time goes on, it seems sort of like it's a nice attempt at a song, but it's not quite. I don't know if it's something. If I had to do it again, would I write it differently? Maybe so. But it was, for us and in that time and place, it was. There weren't that many bands who were playing music like trying to make sounds like that.
Yeah.
A lot of them were just. It all sounded like speeded up. Chuck Berry in some ways, or it was, just thrashy. So
yeah, I mean, I think that's part of the appeal of the album, is that it does have these different aspects to it. Like it's not just one particular style. It does have these different elements, and they're effective and they're very enjoyable.
Well, thank you very much. It's I think our intent was we were not a rockabilly band. We played some twangy music, and some of it was of that thing. But for every rockabilly song, there was a soul song or this and that. So we were certainly trying to. The variety of stuff is part of what I hope people will respond to on the records. That there's a band trying to do different things, trying to, your interests are, let's see if we could do that. Let's see if we could do that.
Yeah, I think that definitely comes through.
And, it's a live band basically captured, trying to behave, let's try to play this as good as we can. I'd love to know if there were, I don't remember on the tape if it has like, take 28 or anything like that. I think they were, it was pretty much hit them as you get it, unless you really make a boner and then start again.
Bill, it was great to meet you and great to talk to you. Thank you for your recollections and insights.
You're very indulgent letting me prattle on.
No, it's absolutely my pleasure. Look, ultimately I'm a music nerd and a music enthusiast. And when I hear music that I enjoy, I love talking to people that are involved in it and getting to learn more about it. So it's been my pleasure. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much. And I have to say, I appreciate your attention to detail in the fact that, that you mentioned like the fills and product in the USA and things like that. That just touches me.
Well, thank you.
I love people who pay attention. Now I have to go listen to it and say like, but nobody's talking about.
At least we'll just have this one moment before that happens.
I know. It's touched my heart.
Bill, thank you very much. All the best.
A wonderful time, Tom. Until the next time.
Until next time, indeed.
coming, but I've got no one. It was a lonely summer. This spring, I thought that I knew you, girl, already mine. The last thing that I expected, girl, was to find out that you lied. When the sun is up down Crystal Beach, sitting in the sun, drinking 5 beers each, I'm lonely, baby, even with my friends. Now, girl, someone's meant for loving, but I'm all alone. Girl, someone's so long coming, but I've got no one. It was a lonely summer. When the sun is up down Crystal Beach, sitting in the sun, drinking 5 beers each, I'm lonely, baby, even with my friends. Now, girl, someone's meant for loving, but I'm all alone. Girl, someone was so long coming, but I've got no one. It was a lonely summer. But summer's over.